Welcome to Picayune Conversations. This is Calvin.
I'm Lindsay.
And we have a very special guest with us today. This is our first guest interview, isn't it?
I think it is.
Yeah, first guest interview, hopefully first of many. But it's pretty exciting to have Alyson Schafer, our friend from Canada, with us today. Alyson is an author, a speaker, a counselor, a family educator, consultant. You can see her on Canadian television regularly. She's on faculty with the International Summer School that we're a part of. She is many, many things, and also a wonderful friend of ours. Alyson, welcome to Picayune Conversations. Thanks for chatting with us.
I'm so glad to be here. I didn't realize I was your first, so I'll make sure that I set the bar high for all fellow guests.
Please do. Please do.
I feel very confident that you will do that. Yeah.
Got to add that Alyson's a great tour guide of Amsterdam.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
We've spent some time on our feet around Amsterdam, going in circles mostly, but we managed
several times. Yeah.
On our way.
Yeah, we just honestly, we could probably just have a very entertaining podcast, just telling stories, mutual experiences that we've had. But Lindsay, you came up with kind of our agenda for today. So what are we going to be talking with Alyson about?
Well, it's mostly going to be Alyson talking because I loved the article, or it was like one of your newsletters, I think, about gentle parenting and like what even the hell is it? And like, it's a very big buzzword right now, but how to compare it with the more Adlerian respectful parenting.
So is this a buzzword in the States as well? Because there's a lot of things Canada and the US do quite similarly, or sometimes we're in a bit of lag time. And then there's other things where it is so clear that I'm culturally bound. And I just want to be very sensitive to that. You guys don't have hydro. You have electric bills, I understand. We have hydro because we live next to Niagara Falls. Everyone has hydro here. But gentle parenting is for sure on social media. That word is just flipped around a lot here. Is it common down there too?
Mm-hmm. Especially, I would say with older parents who were not gentle parented in any way. Their emotions were not kind of the focus. And I think, and we can talk about this obviously, but it seems like now we're overcompensating and we're doing all feelings and no boundaries. And that's what I think the older parents are like, yeah, we don't like it. It's all about feelings. We don't know how to do that,
And Adler himself, when discussing how social change occurs, that the pendulum swinging to the far opposite in that compensatory piece happens not just in parenting styles, that happens in a lot of different areas that we'll see, that we become almost allergic to the thing that we're trying to avoid. And we kind of make rigid rules around never again will I ever do anything that comes similar to that. And so in our attempts to avoid and evade something that we have a negative association with, we go so far in the other extreme. And then over time, the pendulum kind of swings back into that more moderate range. And so I would definitely say that to put ourselves in a place and time and a cultural context, we are in a rebound from a sort of European, North American style of parenting that has traditional roots in a hierarchical, patriarchal, colonialism, monarchies, very power heavy at the top. And so we saw that in society's ways of ruling and reigning, and that was modeled in our homes. And just to be clear, that was appropriate parenting in the time. I know that might goes against our psychological beliefs, but if you understand that the home is your first social institution, and it's the social institution that trains you for functioning in the greater society. If you're living in a hierarchical society, then learning how to be a good employee at the factory where you have no rights is something that gets perpetuated. Doesn't make for good social revolution, but it does prepare you. And so what we're seeing now is the spread of democratic ideals, the breaking down of hierarchical power structures, spread of social equality. And so we're seeing that shift happening in society, and which is wonderful when you realize that kids traditionally have been sort of the lowest tier. And when I say the lowest tier, I mean, back in the Middle Ages, if you had the choice between like losing your cow and losing your kid, you'd pick your cow in a heartbeat, Yeah. They really were, high mortality rates and replaceable, and just, have 15 kids, hope 10 live, actually probably 5 lived with all the bubonic plague and no one knowing about infection and things. And so, even back in the day, you were trained not even to love your kids until they were kind of 8, 9, 10, because the likelihood of them dying and just breaking your heart was just too emotional, that you kind of were told not to bond till they kind of made it through childhood crisis time. So here we are in this very different era where we're seeing with, women's rights to vote. We're seeing Black Lives Matter. We just have so many things that we're seeing society really embracing social equality for all. And it's now trickled all the way down to the lowest tier, which is our children. And so here we're trying our best to say kids deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. And we've probably spent more time in the last 100 years studying children and psychology than we ever have in any other, psychology is rather new when you think about all the sciences. And so now we know that emotions matter, and now we know kids have a need to be seen and heard and be treated with respect and dignity and all these things. But there's just a lag time, and that parents just really don't know quite how to do that yet. And when they understand the psychology that words matter, emotions matter, there's suddenly this new awareness that parenting is super important. And if you get it wrong, we didn't even know that environment mattered. We did not know that parenting influenced children's development. Okay, so we've made huge strides. Now we do. The general public know. And the problem is they've taken that so to heart that they think if they do one little misstep, one little error, that these somehow now fragile children that we didn't think were fragile at all in the past, that we're somehow going to break them, and it's all going to be our fault, and it's all going to be on us. And so we take this responsibility super hard. And we're told that they have these emotions, and we're supposed to co-regulate them. And we can't say anything that might make them dysregulated. And if they're dysregulated, we're supposed to calm them. And we have this huge charge about what we're supposed to do. And parents take it just so seriously that what I'm witnessing in my practice as people describe, scenarios that they're trying to get out of, or trying to parent differently around, is just a tremendous amount of talking about emotions. Oh, I'm so sorry. And oh, that sock is itchy and you don't want to go to school and you don't like how that cereal bowl and, oh, the syrup is too bloppy and you like the one with this lady on the cover and and so parents are just going on and on and on about kids and their emotions and kids and their emotions and kids and their emotions. And I see their good intentions. Like I really do feel that this is good intended parenting. But of course, the reason they're reaching out to me is because it's clearly ineffective, because they're not getting their child emotionally regulated. It's not working.
It's just not complete. And I think you made a good point about, like, in the past, it wasn't all bad. You kind of described that these parents assumed the capability of their kids.
It's very new. It's very new that we have a perspective that children are weak and that everything is so that could be so desperately impacting. And I would say, and especially we're very worried about emotional displays, especially on the negative. Notice we don't get that. If a kid's jumping up and down and happy, we don't say like, whoa, modulate that. I mean, there's some cultures that do not really express even happy emotions. That's like a culturally embedded thing. Like, don't be even happy emotive.
We'll see that in Germany this summer. It'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah. They're really trained to just keep your cards close. Don't show those big emotions. Right. And so we seem to be okay about kids being joyous, but we are not unhappy when a kid is complaining or disappointed. I get a lot of calls about, like, they're not going to make their soccer team. How do I handle their disappointment? As if it could be damaging. As if that disappointment not handled well could be damaging to the child. So there's a great fear happening with the parent. And so somehow we really got phobic about our child experiencing negative situations and the negative emotions that come with it. And we've sort of forgotten that positive growth and development happens from both good and bad experiences.
Yeah.
And that the nature of life is that you're going to have both good and situations that might prove more challenging, and that there is a tremendous creativity on the part of the child to decide what valiance and what amplitude to make around those emotions.
Yeah.
And and that they're a part of that equation. And it's not that if they decide to be really sad about something for a while, that they're somehow being hurt, damaged, impinged upon. That's really a mistaken understanding of emotions.
Yeah.
It's missing out on great opportunities for growth. You know, like, yes, this happened, but the more empowering part is what's the meaning you're making of it and what are you going to do with it? You have stuff within your power. You know? You
Well,
kids don't really, you don't dig deep. I mean, I do understand the idea of co-regulating, but I think any of us, if we think back to our childhood when our parents weren't so hovery and weren't so invested in everything that we were doing, and we had, difficult emotions, what did we do to get over them? Because it is uncomfortable to sit in a difficult emotion. But know that an emotion from a physiological point of view, it lasts about 90 seconds. If you're going to stay upset, it's because you are perseverating and thinking negative thoughts to keep that emotion
right.
going. And so I didn't like to go here. I'll do self-disclosure here. I didn't used to like to go to the bathroom in public washrooms as a kid, but I still had to go to the washroom. I still, hello, just the needs of the situation. I'm at school. I gotta go. And so, what did the creative Alyson do, who didn't like to be nervous about someone peeking over the top or looking underneath or making noise or whatever the thing I was worried about? I would do the alphabet on my fingers. I would do this little counting ritual or whatever to stay distracted. But I came up with that. My parents didn't coach me around that. You leave the organism to face a situation. They get very creative.
Yeah.
People will get creative about how to calm themselves because it doesn't feel good. You're going to keep thinking there's monsters under the bed and nobody comes to calm you. You start going, maybe I should stop thinking there's monsters under the bed, or make friends with them, or invite them to play tease on the end of my bed. And you start thinking differently because nobody wants to be distressed. But if you keep calling your parents and they come in and they say you can sleep in my bed, yeah, I guess getting distressed is a good way to go. So emotions do help us reach our goals. And we have to be really attentive to the idea that there's more at play than what first meets the eye. There's some interpretation that needs to be done.
Yeah. And I think what also is just coming to mind as you're talking about this is that I'm thinking of Terry Real. He's got this great phrase that he uses, which is that he talks about using the language of recovery in service of your pathology. And I've recently become really interested in this idea, particularly, within Adlerian circles, myself among the group, please hear me, of using the language of equality in service of hierarchy. And I think that sometimes, right, like we have this idea that, gentle parenting, this is about, treating the child with dignity and respect, and all of which, by the way, like I'm on board with treating children with dignity and respect and care and nurturance and kindness and, whatever else. But there's this thing where it's like, yeah, that's very nice of us to think that we're doing this virtuous thing. But if we just zoom out a little bit, what that is it's parents acting from a one-up position, saying, oh, you couldn't possibly handle being, cut from your soccer team. You couldn't possibly handle the gloopy syrup. And so now I, from on high, must descend to you and coach you through every last little jot and tittle of this experience, or else it's going to be catastrophic. And that is wildly disrespectful. And I'm not saying that that's like the heart of where a parent is coming from, but it is in essence what it does to a child, to convey a sense of, you are incapable, you are not up to the challenge, you can't possibly figure this out on your own, etc. And so it's not then that we are harsh, that we are cold, that we are uncaring, that we are uninterested, that we are unhelpful as parents, but there is this sense of there has to be this room that as we do those things, we are also communicating to a child a confidence in their abilities, in their capabilities. And I think that sometimes that's what gets missed when we just do this, kind of stroking of the hair of just, yes, this is so difficult. And let me, be with you through this whole, from start to finish, this whole experience.
It kind of says I don't trust you.
Yeah.
So I'm either going to do it for you to control you, so you'll do it my way, or it's I don't trust you. And I don't know. I'm trying to think what the other side of that would be.
Well, it's I add in my newsletter, I was using the different languages for the parenting styles that we've heard over time, with Diane Baumrind as being kind of the original person who was talking about that blend, she talks about being highly demanding versus responsiveness,
Yes.
and so she balances those up. You hear that sort of firm and friendly. Are you too much on the firm? Are you too much on the friendly? Can you do both firm and friendly? In Adlerian, there's the autocratic, authoritarian, and permissive. So these are typical breakdowns that you'll often hear that have a lot to do with that firm friendly blending kind of happening.
Alyson,
And so,
can I please say I was so glad that you were like the authoritarian, authoritative. They always caught me up, and I'm like, thank God, I'm not the only one. And I always have to think about it really hard. But then you talked about like the brick wall, the jellyfish, and what the backbone.
Yeah, that's Barbara Coloroso. Yeah. And again, speaking of differences in languages, so I often say democratic parenting, but I had to do US talk shows, and the word democratic is just a political party down there. That's like, there's
right.
no other use. That means you're a Democrat. And like, I'm just like, okay, let's take that off the table. That is going to get people way down a rabbit hole. And so what I really liked was Steve Mabel's, and I think that's what the nomenclature that you were referring to, where he uses coercive, pampering, and respectful as his language. But he's asking parents to think about their belief system, the belief behind their actions and their motivations. And so he's saying, if you're coercive, you're saying, I don't trust you to manage the gloppy syrup or the disappointment from the team or whatever the hurdle is that life is throwing. I don't trust you to manage life, right? That not trusting you to manage life is that vote of non-confidence that is the disrespectful message that you're talking about, Calvin, right? And so if you don't trust your child to manage life, a vote of non-confidence, the coercive parent is going to say, so I'm going to make you do it. Without me, you would never get up and get to school on time, right? I don't trust you well enough. So if your alarm goes off and you ignore it, I'm going to make sure that you get up. I'm going to take control of the situation. And the pampering parents also don't trust you to be able to manage life. But rather than making you, their solution to the situation is they step in and rescue and do for. You couldn't pause, right? And then respectful parenting, there's the change of the core belief. I actually do trust you to manage. You are made of the right stuff. Do you know everything now? No. Is this going to be a disappointment? Are you going to make some mistakes along the way? Absolutely. You're a newbie. You're a beginner. Do I believe that you are somebody who can process your mistakes, recover from mistakes, learn from mistakes? This is a safe relationship and home environment in order to do those things and grow and develop yourself. And so that's the space that we want to stay in. And I just find that parents might have that as an ideal and they love the concept of that. But without getting some skills under their belt and without sort of running it up around some other people's parenting culture, we do tend to kind of fall more in one camp than the other. And nobody's perfect. I mean, you can try to be really respectful, and then when none of it, your kid's not having it because something else is at play, and then you blow your mind and you're just like, just get in the car. I've got a meeting at 9. And so, and then we have parenting guilt, to help us still, because guilt's a great emotion, right? Guilt is the emotion that tells us that we have meandered from a social protocol, but we still want to keep a good, high opinion of ourselves. So it's a way of acting badly and still having a good opinion of ourselves. It doesn't really change our behavior, but because I felt guilty, I must still be a good parent, because bad parents yell at their kids, good parents don't. But if I yell at my kid and I feel bad at it, I can still keep the status of being a good parent with guilt. I'd rather try not to yell.
Well, no, it's just, it's so fun. We just recorded a podcast last week on the emotion of guilt. And so
was I in alignment with your sharings?
No, we're in total disagreement per usual.
We're gonna have to cancel this.
No, it's like
violent disagreement,
almost verbatim. I think that's. But alongside that, actually, I think that's you're talking about, from the parents' perspective, that there's this kind of catastrophizing idea about damage and lasting harm that's going to occur to kids. And so it's like, look, do I think it's a good thing for me to yell at my kids? No, I do not. And I do work really hard to speak to my children respectfully and with a calm tone and whatever. But then it's like, yeah, I yell at my children. But then there's this, okay, is that also then what I've provided for my children is that I go apologize to them. And I give them a genuine apology. It's not, I'm really sorry for yelling, but you, X, Y, and Z, it's, listen, I just yelled at you And that's not an okay way to talk to another human being. I'm really sorry. I did not manage my emotions well. I'm going to work hard to not do that again. Will you forgive me? And so now what's happening is that my child is saying that, oh, you can screw up, you can not manage your emotions well. And you know what? That is not catastrophic to a relationship. There is room for reconciliation, there's room for forgiveness and for repair in relationships. And I think when we are so insistent on avoiding any disrepair, how then are our children ever going to learn how to repair? You can't learn it.
You can't take mistakes off the table.
Yeah.
That's such powerful modeling.
It is
such powerful
I
modeling.
want to be a perfect parent, because then what they think is, oh crap, when I'm a parent, I can't make any mistakes.
Oh, I can't think of a
Or as
worse
a person. Yeah.
I cannot, if you're talking about environments to raise a child, having a perfect parent would be absolutely guaranteed to screw up a kid. Don't you dare do that to your child.
Paul Rasmussen told me that. He said there are no perfect parents, and if there were, they would be terrible parents because they do not properly prepare their children for the challenges that life is going to throw at them. Because life is full of like, look, I don't mean all the time, always. Of course, we don't want that, but people out in the world are going to mistreat you.
Mhm.
Like, you know.
Well, I don't know if you've heard this latest bulletin, but do you know people can be hard to get along with?
Yeah.
Relationships, actually, their general nature is that they need a lot of work, care, and skills.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's like, if you can get your head around the fact that that's the nature of relationships and not be so disappointed by the reality that they take some work and energy, they take some skills. That's the truth. Where are you going to learn those? You're going to learn those in your first social circle, and you're going to learn a lot from your parents and your siblings. You're going to learn a lot in that nuclear family. Then you're going to learn a lot in your nursery school and your kindergartens, right? And those concentric circles of social embeddedness keep growing and growing and growing. But it's, people have to learn better. I mean, you wrote a whole book about how we need to get along. It doesn't stop in childhood. Then you got to get along with your partner, and you got to get along with your business workers, and you got to get along as countries. We got to get along as a world. We share one ozone layer. Why don't we all get together and try to keep it?
That sounds nice. I'm wondering if it would be helpful. I particularly like the example you used in the newsletter about if you cut your kids' toast, diagonally instead of into squares, and how each level of parenting, what the response might look like. Because people are going to want to know, like, well, how do I do kind but firm? How do I respectfully parent? Maybe knowing how to respond and what they might look like.
Yeah. So I think, if your child gives you an emotional display about something, then I think we want to validate emotions always, because it's their personal truth. It's their personal experience. And there is nothing more bonding in a relationship than feeling felt, feeling understood. Yeah. And so to be able to give that active listening or reflective listening, there's a bunch of different terms, but you're basically repeating back to them a summation of their words, their emotions, and their body language in order to kind of say, is this what you're experiencing right now? So it's like, oh, you just came down to breakfast and you were so looking forward to diagonal toast, and then look what you get served. It doesn't look anything like what you wanted. You are some disappointed with breakfast this morning. And when you kind of even say it with a bit of tone or whatever, you're joining, you're aligning. It's a shared moment. And they're like, yes, that is how I feel. You get me. Nowhere in there did I say you shouldn't feel like you don't. Oh, it's just a piece of toast. What does it matter? It tastes the same. I'm not dissuading them at all about their emotions. I'm agreeing with their experience of the event. Does that mean, from Calvin's point about respect, I also deserve respect? Children deserve respect. I deserve respect. Yes. So my time and budget has already gone into the cost of a piece of toast and the labor to make a piece of toast. And so it would be disrespectful for me to be a short order cook and jump whenever somebody doesn't like how brown it is, how whatever it is. An unreasonable demand is disrespectful to my time and the family budget or whatever you want to call. So I might say, I'm so sorry you're disappointed. I think what I'm learning is that I need to either teach you how to cut your own toast so it's exactly the way you like it every morning, or to ask before I cut it because I don't know what kind of shape you'd like today. Could we work something out? But today, this is what's made. So I'm sorry. We can eat it sad and disappointed, or we can eat it happy and fine. You decide. That's up to you. And I'm not invested in what they do. I don't need their storm to dysregulate me. I don't need to cheer them up because they're in a bad mood about their toast. I'll just sit with somebody kind of grumpy across from me and keep on with my own mood. I don't have to make them happy.
Yeah, I know there's this idea right now of like lending your child your frontal lobe. Have you heard this phrase
Yes.
before?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually I really like that idea. I think unfortunately it gets kind of caricatured into, again, this kind of like stroking of the hair of like, oh my goodness, and let me strap on all the styrofoam pads around you so that nothing ever gets, you don't ever get any owies or something. And I think actually what you're describing, that is lending your child your frontal lobe, because what you're saying, right, is like, with my frontal lobe, I can zoom out and see that this is actually not catastrophic. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to act as if it is not catastrophic. It's also not nothing. I'm connecting with their limbic system, so to speak,
Yes.
but I'm lending them a frontal lobe by saying, yeah, gosh, maybe we'll come up with something so that tomorrow it's not quite so rough. And then there's also this thing of, and today I will survive it. Maybe it'll be rough. Maybe it won't feel very good, and we'll get through it. That also is lending a frontal lobe. It's not just this like touchy-feely accommodation of a feeling. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, so we have mirror neurons, and so our brain states are, for lack of a better word, contagious to one another. So you need to decide, are you going to let your child's brain state be contagious to you and you get upset? Or are you going to be the calm person and in the presence of calmness, increase the likelihood that the child gets their brain back online and
Yeah.
get out of their limbic distress that they're in? So I kind of think about it as like, in what racehorses are very anxious and very fidgety, so they put these little fainting goats in the pens with them because they calm the horses. And they
Yeah.
have these big bull mastiffs that look after all the cattle. The bull mastiffs don't attack wolves. They sit there like Buddhas, and the cows look over and go, well, that guy seems calm, I guess everything's okay. And they've done research on having Buddhist monks in boats that are like from shipwrecks or whatever. One calm person in a boat of 12 people at sea calms the whole boat.
Yeah.
So we need to tap into whatever our little inner fainting goat or, bull mastiff sitting on the hill with the cows, your Buddha, whoever. But when we're in that state, that is helping our children as they pull it together. It doesn't need to be the, I actually have a couple that are like, well, do you believe in timeout? And if I put them in their room because they're all upset, I don't leave the room until they're calm. But they'll go on for like an hour. I'm like, yeah. And so what might be the benefit? Is this the only way to get one-on-one time in your family? Pitch a fit and then you get dad in your room.
For an
Right? If
hour?
I said, hey, will you read a book to me in my room and leave my brother alone? Oh, no, this is family time. I couldn't go read a book in your room right now. No trouble. I'll just throw a book and have a fit, and then you'll come up and we'll just spend it that way. So I really don't want that secondary gain
Yeah.
to prove that quiet, well-behaved kids get ignored, and kids that are emotional and upset get a parent who's told that are hearing through the media that it's their job to, like, as you say, comb their hair, calm them down. And so interesting, like those displays of upsettedness go longer. And even when they say, I've taught them to box breathe, I've taught them to count backwards by 10. I'm like, but you're missing the point. They don't want to calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Their upset is serving them very well. So long as it's getting them to felt plus and being serving a purpose or a usefulness, they're not going to calm down. So it's always asking ourselves, what is keeping this going? And could it be that our response to it is part of a subconscious payoff that we need to be more aware of? So I'm not holes barred saying ignore all kids' emotional displays. I'm saying we do that reflective listening, this maybe you give the back a little rub or whatever, but then I give them the complete right to feel however they want for how long. I just don't feel that I need to be pulled into it.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just think it's so important. It reminds me of the connection before correction.
Yes.
Just summarizes.
Lindsay, say more about that, because you and I know that term, but that not all people listening might know the phrase.
Or like when your child's upset, like, yes, connect with them first. So that way they feel like you're on their team. It is so much harder to be upset with somebody that is on your team, for one. But also, once you're connected, then hearing the correcting, hey, I love you, and I hear you're really upset about this toast. And I usually add, like, you're allowed to be upset about this toast. And like, what ideas do you have, for tomorrow morning, right? And I don't know, it's that I love you, and I'm not going to let you control me, you know? I always try to connect, and it works with couples too. I have them do it. Connect, have a hug first. I always ask my daughter, would you like some connection? I do say it like that just because she thinks it's funny. I'm like, would you like some connection? Sometimes she says yes, sometimes she says no, but she knows I'm on her team, and she knows I'm going to stay there while she's upset. And honestly, once you say, you can be as upset as you would like. You can cry as long as you want to. It usually lasts for like 2 more seconds.
Yeah.
And then we hug, and she says, I think I was just mad, and it came out like a silly feeling where I wanted to punch you. And I'm like, yeah, and it hurt. Like, what ideas do you have for next time? You set the limits, you give them responsibility. Like I'm saying, like, hey, your feelings matter, but also I'm not responsible for them, and you're not responsible for mine, which is why I'm doing that frontal lobe sharing with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of all the research around social referencing, and kind of like the classic example of this, right, is like kid trips and falls. And we see this a lot, with like toddlers, they're toddling, like they're not quite stable. So they fall down on their face. And then the first thing that they do, they don't cry right away. The first thing they do is that they immediately put up their little head and they look at mom or dad or whoever else, responsible adult around. And what they're looking for is like, so how bad was it? And so the parents who are, please hear me, like I have been this parent too, who, you watch your child face plant and you're just like, oh my gosh, and you get all worked up and you're sprinting over, you're throwing aside whatever it is that you were holding a second before. You're doing that. And what's going on, the child is like, oh my God, I guess it's really bad. Like, it's just so bad,
You're telling them how to feel about it.
That's right. And so, of course, developmental psychologists have sorted out, we've known this for years, is that what a parent needs to do in a situation like that, it's not neglect. It's not that you don't look. You don't assume that the kid is okay, but you look at the kid inquisitively of like, well, I don't know, how bad was it? And then, sometimes it's like, it really hurt, like they really are hurt. And then they cry because they check in with their body. And you can go over and you put on a Band-Aid and you give it a little smooch wherever it is, whatever it is that they need to do, and you help calm them down. But there's this sense of like, we look to the child, we're leaving room for the child to have their own experience rather than imposing our experience of their experience onto the child. And that actually is we talk about co-regulating, that's what co-regulating can look like. Rather than this, again, just this like highly accommodating, pitying way of doing things.
I think that's particularly true when we talk about the intergenerational phenomena of anxiety. How much of it is genetic expression, how much of it is modeling. And you can imagine the child who's got an anxious parent who is constantly broadcasting that the world is a scary place that you need to worry about because they are. And the child's trying to make sense of their world, and they're looking for you as their biggest reference, as the primary attachment figure. And it's like, I guess it's scary. Mom seems to be scared of everything. She's a wise woman. I guess I should be too,
Yeah.
What I was going to say about to piggyback off you is that the connection part, because I feel like, and maybe you guys have seen this, that parents worry that they're going to do it wrong. Like, I don't know my own feelings. How am I going to know how to help my child? I'm like, just do it shitty. Just guess. It's not about getting it right. It's about like showing like, hey, I'm trying to understand you. Also, that gives them a chance to be like, no, like very many times, very many. I'm going to go with it. Very many times I've been like, it seems like you're feeling really mad. I'm not mad. I'm like, okay, tell me, what are you feeling? And then she gets to check in with herself. I tell him, like, check in with your body. How do you feel? And then she gets to tell me,
sorry, my kids used to say, well, Mom, you're saying you're not mad, but your face says you are. You see this face? It's very hard for me to to hide my emotions. Yes. Yeah. You say I'm not mad, Lindsay.
So, Allison,
Well,
what remains to be said about, as we're kind of thinking through this generational shift towards gentle parenting, and let's say we've kind of exposed its virtues, and I think that there are many virtues in there, and we've also kind of recognized that you could take it too far where maybe it's not doing what we would want it to do. What have we missed that you would really want to add to our conversation thus far?
yeah, I think that we've given a lot of examples of the friendly portion, and so I think just giving a moment to talk about the firm part is really the boundary part. And in Adlerian psychology, when we take down the hierarchy, then if we want to live in egalitarian, mutually respectful relationships, then how do we decide who makes the rules? How do you know where the boundaries are? Like that becomes a bit of a quandary. But Adler and Dreikers in their child guidance recommendations said that we can always look to the needs of the situation. What do the needs of the situation call for? They are the highest ranking in a democracy. We live in a group. What do the needs of the situation call for? So if you can refer to that and challenge yourself. So you go to a restaurant and your kids are getting up and down from the table. So what do the needs of the situation call for? What is the social conduct in a restaurant, in a group? You're not doing your children any favors if you don't help them learn how to live in collective arrangements. Yeah. They're going to be isolates. They're going to be outliers, and that will cause psychic distress. So it's not about like conformity to the point of like, again, not obedience, but understanding that when you understand the needs of the situation, that you're going to be socially successful, and that's very rewarding from a bonding social species point of view. So when we go to restaurants, we can't be bumping into the waitress. We need to make sure that everybody's safe. We need to be respectful of the other people dining so that they can hear their conversations. So we need to stay at our table. And so that's what that's not my way or whatever. That's like, you should know this now. You're going to need to know this at 12. You're going to be eating out when you're going out with business colleagues. Learning how to eat in a restaurant is learning to be a social creature. So too many times parents will say like, well, he doesn't have the attention span, or he has ADHD, or he's too young, or he's too bored, or that's too long to wait. And we write all these excuses so that we don't help our children develop the social skills. So yeah, do we need to keep them engaged and entertained? Why do you think they give those little crayon kits and the little, the placemats with paper on them? And if they don't have those there, don't pull out the iPad, start a conversation, play I Spy, get the engagement going, use it as family connection time. But to have a bar so low that they can't, I'm always like, they can't or they won't. They can't or you haven't trained them yet. And a lot of our kids can't because they haven't been trained, and we haven't given them the expectation, and we've not made them aware of the needs of the situation. And then when suddenly, it's Mother's Day and we want them to sit still and they've had no training, then we get mad at them because they don't know how to act in a restaurant. So, we do need to look at the needs of the situation. We do need to do training around, boundaries and enforcing those boundaries. And it's the enforcing it with a friendly way. So, it might be that you need to go out to restaurants with the only idea that you're training around restaurant behaviors. And if they have trouble staying in their seats, then, we need to sit our little bums on the stool and enjoy our meal. And if that's a difficulty for us today, then, we'll need to wrap this up and ask for a to-go pack, and we'll head home. And so, if you do that 2 or 3 times, kids realize I kind of want to stay at the restaurant. I'm going to stay in my seat. Or you take them out to the car. One person takes them out to the car and you say, oh, get your little fiddlies out. And then when you're calm again, we can go back in and try again. Maybe you don't have to go all the way home. You can kind of work the situation, what works best for you. But if you think you're just going to miraculously get good behavior or different behavior from kids, and you haven't done any training around boundaries, you haven't set any expectations for typical behaviors, I find most parents just really underestimate what their kids can do.
Yeah.
And it's the kids can do a lot more if we put the take time for training piece in place. And then you end up with way happier kids because they're being socially successful. They don't want to be corrected. They don't want to go through. They want to just go out and have fun.
They want to contribute too.
Yeah.
Like before we go to any place new, I'm like, how can we, talking about the demand of the situation, whatever it's going to be, how can we contribute to ourselves and to others when we get to this place? Maybe you don't phrase it like that if your kid's two, but like, luckily I can say that to my kid. How are we going to contribute? And she'll come up with things like, well, I guess I could sit at the table. Or if I said, what if you were to run around? Do you think that would be contributing? And then she has ideas. No, I might run into someone, or I might bother someone. I'm like, okay, well then maybe we stay in our seats. Okay. Not my idea, her idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have they have so many ideas if we share and don't criticize when the first one's not brilliant. If we criticize every idea that a kid has, they just learn to shut up and they don't contribute. But it's like, let's give it a try. What else could we do? So long as we keep that again, it's part of being in a psychologically safe relationship, is where you don't feel that there's threat or harm by contributing.
Yeah. And I think too, like when you're describing, I just love this metaphor of the restaurant. I think a mistake that we can make sometimes is that when we call emotions valid, we kind of equate that to, and it's okay to indulge them.
Mm-hmm.
So say more, what do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is, it's like, okay, so, it's like, look, I don't think that there's anything morally wrong with me. You'll forgive the example, but like, there's nothing wrong with me, like having to fart, right? But that doesn't make it okay for me just to rip one when I'm in an elevator.
Or right now.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Or right now, right? Like,
Go ahead. I love Zoom. You just go right ahead, Kelvin. There's no smell-o-vision here.
yeah, it's just like, I don't have to rebuke myself. I don't have to like make it something like, ooh, that's so nasty that you would want to do that, or that you feel the need to do this. That's so bad. That's terrible. That's gross. You're gross. It has nothing to do with that. But it's like, but right now I'm sharing space with other people, and I need to be aware of how my behavior affects other people. I don't have to be a slave to that, but I can be aware and make choices that are reflective of the fact that I share the world with other people. So it's like, okay, it's hard to sit still. Fine. You don't have to be like neurotypical normie kid who like just sits, which, by the way, that's like a weird kid who can sit still for, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's great. Okay. But like, that's not the goal. The goal is, all right, you've got squirms. What would you like to do with that, given the fact that we are in a restaurant? I think that's the push and pull of this, is that I think that more like authoritarian or coercive parenting says, no, like you must dispositionally be okay with sitting, and I'm going to train you to want to sit still. No, you won't. No, you won't. But it's also, to indulge it on the other end, to say, well, like, oh, but they have to squirm. They can't sit still. They can't, do anything. Yeah, but they share the world with other people. And so they have to learn how to steward with what they've got.
And it's respectful too, because it's saying, again, how can I contribute to myself and to others? To deny that you have the wiggles, like if you've met my daughter.
She literally never sits still. It's hilarious to watch.
And they've now proven that those kids are like super healthy. There's actually all kinds of benefits to being somebody who's twitchy. So like that'll serve her well in the long run. But that doesn't mean she has to disturb the social order.
That's
correct.
it.
It's saying, this is who you are. How can we make use of it so that it contributes both to you and everyone? And like with the farting thing, it's like, well, you don't want to like hold it in and get a stomach ache. Like go to the bathroom. Like that would contribute to you.
There's a time and a place. Just like step outside the front door, fresh air. It's like a fart will disperse in 3 seconds. Like it's gonna be fine. But you can't be doing that in an elevator.
Yeah. And we also, it also serves to say, let's also be open to the idea that we have historic mental models of how things should be. And sometimes those need to be revisited. So, sometimes we learn a lot from kids. Like, it took a long time till we figured out that kids with autism have stomach problems, and that when they hang upside down, it fixes their vestibular system and it does something to the pressure in their gut. And they were self-regulating by hanging upside down. They weren't being disobedient monkeys.
That's
And,
right. Yeah.
and so you see kids who can focus more when they play chess, these chess master kids, and they sit up on their haunches. And if you said, sit in your seat, you're being disrespectful. They actually think better when they're not disturbing anyone around them. Why did it become the tradition that the feet have to be on the floor and the bum and the back has to be, if they're not disturbing others, maybe we need to let that go. Like I had a large argument with a mother who said that the ladder on a bunk bed must be at one side. I said, why not the other side? It's if it locks and it's safe and it's like, because it's always been that way. It's like
Arbitrary. Yeah.
there's a lot that we have with children that is arbitrary, and they have so many creative ideas that if we could, open up to some of that and say, so long as it meets the needs of the situation, that the social order is maintained, that your needs are being met, but not at the cost of burdening others, then I think we got something workable here.
Yeah. I love that you brought it back to the needs of the situation. I mean, that's how things are arbitrary, right? Is that they have nothing to do with the needs of the situation. And that's a nice, it's not to say that there's no gray area or whatever, but it's a nice litmus test of like, what does the situation demand right here? And maybe nothing, and maybe something, and that'll help us to maybe sort some of that out.
I had this one school where they were trying to bring presenting problems, the kids were too loud in the lunchroom. I mean, what school doesn't have that problem? Their solution from an autocratic way was that if you can't turn around, you only could look forward to the people at your table. And so if you turned around, they would put you on the wall. And so, they had assigned seating. So the kids quickly learned that if they turned around, they'd get put on the wall. So then their friend would turn around. So then the two of them would be on the wall, but at least they'd be together. So they were outsmarting the teachers. And the whole thing was an attempt to keep the volume down. So when the Adlerian consultant came in and said, if the problem is about being loud and you talk to the kids about it, why don't you get one of those meters that, like lawnmowers, so many, whatever, put the meter up in the lunchroom and just say, guys, could you keep it below the it hurts our ears level on the little meter? And so they'd get all excited. Then they'd look over and they, okay, we got to keep it down a little bit. We got to keep it down. Sub-threshold. And they were perfect at self-monitoring when you actually brought them into the problem.
Exactly.
Just sit straight. Don't talk to your friends. Don't turn around. That's needs of the situation. We just need it quieter. Great solution.
Yeah. And we need to trust our kids more.
Yeah. Alyson, thank you so much for this. Honestly, are you feeling like, I feel like we could just go another hour and have a great time with it?
Yeah, but, even within the one topic, but you can imagine all the spin-off topics that we could get into. Yeah. Thank you for a fulsome conversation.
Yeah, we'll stick a pin in it for today, and maybe we'll just have to, have you on for, certainly in some other season, but maybe even again this season, because we just love talking to you so much.
I'm sitting in the wings anytime you need me.
So sweet. And also you're welcome to use this, like if parents have other questions that, because you're more connected with the parenting communities, we'd love to hear questions, and maybe we can even have you back on.
We'd love it.
And real quick, Alyson, can you tell people how to get connected to other resources that you have? We know that you have many, so toot your horn a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the portal where you can get to all my other things is my website. So it's AlysonSchafer.com, spelled AlysonSchafer.com. So, and there it has all the links that go off to my social media. So I post on all the typical platforms. It's got all my upcoming media events and workshops, and link to my podcast. And on my podcast, I'm always looking to, as you say, to questions. So if somebody has a parenting question and they don't mind like waiting a month to get an answer, I certainly appreciate them. And a lot of people that are like learning this and taking courses, they like hearing the questions, and then they're like, guess what Alyson's going to say? Yes, I got it. She said consequences. Yeah, she said family meeting. So you might learn something, or you might just feel good that you kind of know that you're following along well, whatever. But I always appreciate questions. And so, yeah, thanks for that contribution from anyone who's being shy. It's always answered anonymously. I never name you or your children. I strip out anything that if a child ever jumped on the podcast, they would never know it was their family. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for all the work that you do, and also really primarily for being our very, very good friend. We miss you. We're excited to see you really just in a few weeks here. We're going to see you in Germany. Yeah.
I'm not going, unfortunately.
Oh, no. Well,
I couldn't do the Germany, but if you'd like to send me more of those, the American snacks that you sent me, I just want you to know Yeah, I might have to.
Be
No,
connected.
I'm going to have to send a money order to get those, because when I posted those and everyone said, they're in Canada? They're in Canada? People went crazy. It was one of my most popular posts, was thanking you for my little nibble gift. So
Just saying, there's a certain pretzel company that if you'd like to sponsor this podcast, I think we've got an episode that might.
oh yeah.
So we love you, Alyson. Thanks.
Love you too. Till the next one.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.